Hey everybody, we are in front of Four Daughters Irish Pub in Medford, Oregon. Great place to go enjoy a beer and some great food. So let's go inside and learn a few things about beer. Hey everybody, we are at Four Daughters in Medford, Oregon, and they are a multi-tap pub. And they have 8 beers that are always on tap, and then they have 4 rotating taps. So what does that mean? That means that you get fresh beer all the time, and fresh beer is better beer. So we picked 4 of those beers to look at today, and we're going to talk a little bit about the 4 different beers in our C.A.M.F.A. And C.A.M.F.A. is C.A.M.F.A. It stands for color, aroma, mouthfeel, flavor, and alcohol. So let's start. The first one we're looking at is Trumer Pils. Trumer Pils is a beautiful, clear, well-filtered, golden beer. It's lovely. It is a great one for a crisp, warm day. It's a great one for lighter body food. So let's talk about the first letter, C, in that C.A.M.F.A. Color. When you look at the color of a beer, it tells you a lot of things. The color of the beer indicates the level of malting of the barley. The color indicates the roasting level of the barley, which means that a lot of the color from your beer comes directly from the barley and how far it's been roasted or kilned. The deeper the roasting or kilning, the darker the flavor impartation. So it makes some sense. When you look at a lot of American light lagers, you look at that they're very pale or light yellow. That makes perfect sense because a lot of them use a rice or a corn or just a very pale malt. So you're going to get that color from that main ingredient. So the color from that Trumer Pils is a beautiful straw yellow, pale yellow, golden, light golden yellow. And you should be able to give a color identifier to your beer that helps you remember what it was you drank. And I'm just going to taste this to make sure it's okay. Crisp, as it should be. No off flavors, which is good, which also indicates that the bar has clean tap lines. Tap lines should be clean every 9 to 14 days, industry standard. One thing I want to point out right now too before we go on to the A is if you look up here and you see that, or some people might call it residue, the proper word is lacing, and lacing on beer indicates that the glass is beer clean. So what does beer clean mean? Let me take another sip and I'll tell you about it. We've got 2 layers started now. It's going up the side. A beer clean glass means that as it was cleaned, it was thoroughly clean, meaning there's no residue of sanitizer, there's no soap, there's no oil or anything like that that impedes the beer from releasing the carbonation equally as it is consumed. So that's a good sign. So C is color. Let's go on to our next beer. C.A.M.F.A. Color was our first one. A is aroma. There are a couple ways to smell your beer, and we're going to take this beer right here as our example for aroma. This is a slightly dark golden, very pale brown beer. And the aroma on your beer is one of the first things that you'll notice about your beer. The color is usually the first thing if you have good eyesight. If you don't, then you're still going to notice if it's very opaque or if it's more clear. But if we go on to aroma, there's a couple of ways you can smell your beer which are the best for the beer and the best for you. 2 styles I'm going to highlight are Bloodhound and Drive-By. Let's do the Bloodhound first. The Bloodhound, if you think of a Bloodhound dog, they take short sniffs constantly to get the smells in their memory and in their head and find out what they need to do. And the Bloodhound then means you're going to take 2 to 3 short whiffs, not real deep, into your nose and through your system so you can really get the aroma. So you put your nose down into it, don't get a little drip, but if you do, there's no crime in that. Put your nose down into it and I like to take 3 just because it's a nice pattern for whatever reason. But you can take 2 as well. So that's the Bloodhound method of the aroma or smelling your beer. The second method is the drive-by. The drive-by, you're driving by your nose. So what you do is you start over on one side and you inhale as it goes underneath. The key to both of these is that they are shorter inhalations, and what that does is it really stays on your olfactory and in your senses so you can get a quick, really accurate smell. If you inhale it too deeply, what you do is you take all the smell and it goes past everything and you don't have anything left to smell. So those are two great methods for smelling. That's part of the aroma of your beer. And I'm going to taste this and make sure it's okay now. That's a nice beer. Would you like some? Let's move on to our third letter. C.A.M.F.A. Color and aroma were the first ones. M is the next one, as in mouthfeel. Mouthfeel is also body. It's the texture of the beer in your mouth. What we chose for this one is one of my favorites, styles I should say, and it's a lambic. And lambics are wildly fermented, so they have a very aggressive fermentation, which means they also have very tiny bubbles. Think champagne bubbles, something that tickles your nose perhaps or really sparkles. So this is a perfect example, even though it was incidental, for mouthfeel. The mouthfeel of this lambic will be very tingly, it will be very energetic, you'll have some zing to it, which is great. So when you take the beer into your mouth, there's a couple things to keep in mind. I'm going to test it just to make sure here. Yes, it definitely has the zing, it has some real zip to it. And that happens to be part of the style. At the same time, a good healthy beer should have some zip and some zing to it from the carbonation. Properly carbonated beer indicates a couple things. First of all, that it is being well taken care of. Next of all, that you have the yeast that's still perpetuating carbonation. If your yeast dies, your beer becomes very one-dimensional. Beer is a living organism because you have that yeast. That's really important to keep that alive. That's also why you should refrigerate your beer. The color, the aroma, the mouthfeel, they'll all be affected by how you treat the beer. So this is a great example for mouthfeel. The other things I get in there is definitely some flavor. That's coming up next. This is a great example for mouthfeel. It's how it feels in your mouth. One thing about mouthfeel also is when you taste your beer, make sure you put it all over your mouth. Here's why. You have taste buds, of course, on the surface of your tongue. You also have them on the back of your throat, the sides of your cheeks, and the roof of your mouth. So unless you give all those taste buds an equal opportunity to help you fully experience that beer in your mouth, you're cutting yourself short and you're not giving the beer the best chance. So when you take it, you might see my cheeks expand a little bit, and I'll just show you. Get the best mouthfeel and flavor, which is next. Really swish it around your whole mouth. We're talking about C.A.M.F.A today at Four Daughters Irish Pub in Medford, Oregon. We're talking about color, aroma, mouthfeel, flavor, and alcohol. We've talked about color with the lovely Trumer Pils, very pale and steady and solid. Has a very pale straw yellow color. We've talked about aroma with this lovely, very hoppy beer. It smells great. It smells how it should smell. We've talked about mouthfeel, and we used this lovely framboise, which is a highly carbonated, wildly fermented beer, which works great for mouthfeel. We're going to use the same beer to talk about flavor. When we talk about flavor with our beer, there's a few things to keep in mind. One is you can have on flavors, you can have off flavors. Off flavors mean there's something wrong with the beer. Is it going to harm you? It's not going to hurt you. However, beer is a living organism, and you should treat it with respect and therefore treat it right. You need to keep it refrigerated. You need to keep it out of the sunlight. Those things will affect everything. Enemy of beer is oxygen and sunlight, or UV. That's also why a brown bottle is the best bottle. A can is even better to maintain your beer's integrity. So let's talk about flavor, the F in C.A.M.F.A. Flavor of your beer comes from so many different things. Of course, four primary things being the four ingredients of beer. You've got water, the malted barley, the yeast, and the hops. And those things come together in spectacular synergy in beer. Now this beer in particular being a framboise, which means it's wildly fermented, which means it's also very highly carbonated in a fantastic natural way. And the flavor of this is remarkable because lambics are much different than a lot of other beers that people are familiar with. Some people will often state that they don't believe this is beer. It is in fact beer because it tastes more like a sparkling wine. So your flavor, make sure you take it all over your mouth like this. If we had an in-mouth camera, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? But make sure to give the flavor the best opportunity that you put it all over your mouth. Another one of my favorite things about flavor is pairing beer with food, and we'll talk about that another time. The flavor of this is lovely. There are no off flavors. It doesn't taste like cardboard. It doesn't taste like paper. It doesn't taste like it's been sitting in the sun, and we'll learn more about that another time too. The flavor indicates the health of the beer. Cheers. The last A is what we're talking about now, and it's alcohol. Alcohol is measured by weight and also by volume in the United States. What we typically realize is the ABV, or the alcohol by volume. What that means is, what is the alcohol, literally, by volume of the beer. By weight happens more when you're in the brewing process. By volume is more the finished product. So it's an easy benchmark for most people to recognize. A lot of beers on the market in the United States in particular average from 4.5 to 6.2, 6.5%. That is far and away the bulk of the beer alcohol by volume in the United States. And what that means is that's how much alcohol per serving. Let me give you a comparison. A lot of beers being in that average range, or we're just going to average it out and say 5%. Pretty common. It's enough alcohol so you may feel a buzz if that's what you want. Be responsible about it. It's nice to enjoy a little buzz if you can be responsible about it. If you don't want that much alcohol, go to more of a session beer, a lighter alcohol by volume beer, something that's a 4%, 4.5%. It's amazing how little of a percentage difference a big difference makes. The comparison is that most wine is 12% ABV. So this is half the alcohol by volume of most wines. Now I'm generalizing, so keep in mind it's a rule of thumb, as it were. And of course liquor is by proof, and so liquor is significantly higher. That's why one glass of beer on the average of 12 ounces equals the same as about 6 ounces of wine. You can see the difference, equals about 1.5 ounces, 2 ounces of hard liquor or spirits. So that's the key with alcohol. You need to pay attention to that. You need to be responsible, of course. It's about moderation, and especially moderation when you really want to savor and enjoy your beer. So we've talked about all those different components. We've talked about color, aroma, mouthfeel, flavor, and alcohol. Use them all to really embrace and enjoy your beer. Cheers.